What's up, players? Due to popular demand and the fact that I claimed Summoner as a third main during Stormblood, here we are with the Summoner Starter Kit. What I love about the Summoner is the feels of seeing all the numbers and letters flying everywhere, particularly on AoE packs. To me, it feels like a Diablo Rift where the goal is to fill the screen with as many explosions and as much number gluttony as you can. In this guide, we'll be going over the cycle of summon phases and the always important delivery of weaving GCDs and off GCDs together with the Summoner's Toolkit to ensure you're summoning those big numbers. As is tradition, we'll also be going through examples of the AoE rotation and the single target rotation, with skills involved on those encounters displayed on the right side of the frame with relevant tooltips to get you started down the path of the Summoner. Outside of myself, your companions for this spiritual journey are going to be those 3 mini versions of some of the early ARR primals, as they're not affected by most combat mechanics since Shadowbringers came around, and you'll be controlling their skills within your own action bars. We need only touch on their situational use for this guide. Ifrit will be used for single target encounters, Garuda for AoE encounters, and Titan's going to be used for when you're out in the world just solo memeing around, or never because he's pretty much useless. Let's jump right into an overview of the summoning phases and the use of your GCD and off GCD abilities together. On the right side of the frame is a list of the Summoner's GCD and OGCD abilities, and directly under those lists, I've whipped out my Kagami plugin for ACT to provide a visual representation of what double weave and single weave ability output looks like. Your overall goal during each of these phases will be to fire off a combination of 2 off GCD abilities between each of your GCD ability casts. While there is a healthy list of off GCDs available to the Summoner, there will be times where you're waiting for some of those to become available, and most likely hardcasting Ruin 3 or Outburst, depending on the situation, so be aware of what's coming off cooldown next in each phase and plan your next weave accordingly. Also remember that if you're hardcasting a spell, you'll not be able to weave off GCD abilities, as you're effectively filling that time with the actual cast time. To alleviate this design, you'll be provided procs of further Ruin via your Iggy Assault that will turn your instant cast Ruin 2 into a Ruin 4. And since we're talking about all this Ruin, keep in mind you're also going to be looking to keep 100% uptime on your dots, as they provide a potency bonus to your Ruin skills depending on how many dots are applied to the target. To me, the rotation for the Summoner feels very much like a priority system and is presented in a phase progression correlated to their ability groupings. This cycle begins with Dreadworm Trance, building up to the Behemoth phase. You then have a period of filler actions as you wait for Firebird Trance to come up, and then you'll go into the Phoenix phase. Once Phoenix leaves the battlefield, you will again be in a filler build-up phase as you get ready to begin the cycle all over again with the Dreadworm Trance. I'm going to outline the priorities and abilities that will be used in these specific phases in the AoE and single target examples section of the video coming up. And now let's move on to what I consider the most feel-good scenario for the Summoner, the AoE rotation. If possible, you'll want to land an outburst just as all the mobs are being pulled together. Throw a Tri-Disaster on one of the targets and follow that up with your Bane ability to spread that love to all of his surrounding friends. Energy Siphon is your AoE Aetherflow generator, and Pain Flare will be your AoE Aetherflow spender. I like to toss a Ruin 2 to get my Iggy Assaults out there, and then I go right into the Dreadworm Trance. Dreadworm Trance will reset your Tri-Disaster ability, but the best part of the Dreadworm Trance is that it drops your cast time by 2.5 seconds, so your hardcast abilities are now instant cast abilities, which makes Outburst your real go-to here, and you'll want to finish out the trance by casting Death Flare at the very last second to finish this phase. Now you're ready to pull Behemoth out of the stable. Behemoth's phase is pretty straightforward, and you'll want to get as many GCD-inducing abilities into this phase as possible, since Behemoth's Worm Wave is now triggered only from GCD abilities since Shadowbringers started. I know you've been watching those dot timers like a hawk, so if your dots are just about to fall off, re-up them with your reset Tri-Disaster and re-bane them to keep the disease party going. If you're efficient in this phase, you can pinch off 8 Worm Waves before Behemoth takes off. Most AoE packs don't live long enough to make it into the Phoenix phase, but the Phoenix phase can be very effective on AoE pulls, so don't be shy when using him on the next pack if there is one. I'll cover the particulars of the Phoenix phase in the following single target phase section of the video. Rather than using Outburst, you'll try to land a Ruin 3 on pull. Getting your dots rolling with Tri-Disaster immediately, you're going to use an energy drain to collect your Aether Flow and a Fester to expend those Aether Flow. Fester gains potency per dot applied to the target, so make sure you're using that spender with both dots present on the target for maximum effect. Now that your target is warmed up, you'll want to get right into the Dreadworm Trance to get those snappy instant cast ruins on deck. Continue your weaving throughout this phase, prioritizing Ruin 3 and using Ruin 4 if you need to dump further ruin stacks. Enkindle Ifrit somewhere in this phase and get ready to Death Flare at the last second to squeeze as much instant casting and movement freedom as you can before it's Behemoth time. Now the Dreadworm phase is passed, you'll be going right into Behemoth phase. Use Ruin 4 to weave Enkindle Behemoth or any other off GCD you want to handcuff it to if available. You'll be primarily hardcasting Ruin 3 in this phase, and saving a few of those Ruin 4s for the back half of Behemoth's timer for the second Enkindle Behemoth, and the transition out of the phase, as well as any movement you need due to boss mechanics. If you'd re-up your dots somewhere around the end of Dreadworm Trance or the beginning of pulling Behemoth out, you'll probably be just about ready to do your only hardcast reapplication of Bio and Miasma soon after coming out of Behemoth phase. You're now in your first main filler or build-up phase, slowly creeping up on the Phoenix round. Keep it business as usual in these filler phases by weaving off GCDs that become available between ruins. In my opinion, the Phoenix phase is very straightforward. You'll have your Ruin and Outburst abilities swapped out with Fountain of Fire and Brand of Purgatory respectively. You will alternate between casting these two abilities, starting with Fountain of Fire, which will give you the buff Hellish Conduit, allowing you to then use Brand of Purgatory. These are both instant cast abilities and lend themselves to the perfect opportunity to freely weave for the duration of this phase. Exactly like Behemoth, Phoenix has an Enkindle that you'll be throwing in twice during the phase, as well as its own version of Wormwave called Scarlet Flame, which will be cast on your GCD bearing abilities. Once Phoenix is gone, you'll move into your second filler prep phase, where you're going to once again be prioritizing Ruin 3 and building up further ruin stacks as needed to start the entire cycle all over again when Dreadworm Trance comes back up. And that, friends, is the cycle. Speaking of cycles, that brings us to the end of our summoning cycle together, players. I've enjoyed the 5.0 iteration of the Summoner, and while I do agree with some of the other Summoners' notions that there's some clunk in the rotation, particularly in the filler phases, I still think this is a very fun class to play, and once you get comfortable there, you can really conjure up that Diablo number gluttony nostalgia if you're into that sort of thing. How do you guys think the Summoner stacks up with the other casters like the Red and Black Mage so far in Shadowbringers? Let me know in the comment section, and don't be shy on that subscribe and notification button if you're looking forward to the next starter kit. As always, thanks for stopping by and hanging out with me, and I'll see you on the next one, players.